Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Silicon Valley Innovation Center interview. I am your host, Ricky Rahim-Tula, and I'm really delighted that you can join us today because we have a wonderful guest. His name is Roger Chen, Professor Roger Chen, I should say, because he is a professor at the University of San Francisco. And he is with us now. We're talking today about how to protect your core business while innovating, a very topic close to the hearts of many executives, I'm sure. But to start, Roger, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And I think before we just get on to talk about how it is that we can innovate whilst also protecting and maintaining core business, let's just talk about this conflict that we find between innovation and core business. I know you've spoken about this in the past. You've talked about what it could be described as a natural conflict between doing your established business and innovating. So perhaps you can start there and expand on that a little bit for us. What is this conflict that we see? What is the nature of it, and why does it come about?
Okay, first of all, actually, I thank you for inviting me, and it's my pleasure to share my thoughts with you and also with your audience. Actually, first of all, we're talking about the corporate innovation entrepreneurship, which is very different from the startup innovation, right? So for the companies or established companies, they exist because they have established business. Otherwise, they won't exist. And so then you think about this kind of natural conflict. But there's a very interesting angle I would like to point out. In my kind of view, many times innovation needs to relate to companies' growth or relates to companies' kind of rebirth of the company, right? So then you talk about existing business or incubating or developing future business. In that context, understanding this conflict is very natural because when you manage your existing business, first of all, you're making money. The most important thing is you make money. And also, you're in the existing business, your market, your competitors, and how to execute. And also you try to improve your efficiency. You try to kind of improve your execution. But on the other hand, for many innovation activities, especially this kind of innovative business or emerging business, many of those kind of things you are dealing with are almost the opposite to what we just discussed. For example, making money in innovation activities or incubating is spending money, right? And also in existing business, you have a lot of uncertainties. You know your customer, you know your market. But in innovation activities or incubating new business, you have a lot of uncertainties. You do not clearly know who are your customers. What is the market structure? Who are the competitors? And also in the existing business, although you do have some kind of changes, but overall you have the ballpark, the picture. But in the innovation activities, you have to deal with constant changes or adjustments. So it's almost like an analogy is like you have two people with almost opposite personalities living in the same house. So how can you just deal with these two very, very different, sometimes opposite kind of a personality people? That's a big challenge. I think that's one of the natural causes for established companies to innovate, to explore new things. So I think that's that's the reason why innovation is not easy for many established companies.
And so does it then follow, Professor Chen, that the companies that have survived for a long time and have been with us for many years and over the generations and have moved through different changes in technology, I mean, does it follow then that those companies are good at innovation because they've managed to sort of meet the short-term goals of their core business, but also long-term, they've had to adapt, they've had to innovate. And so these things, as you've just said, these two things are really hard to do, inside one organization at the same time. But so do you feel that the companies that we see, which are, have longevity, is that because they have managed to do this? And, if so, how do they do that?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And also this is a very insightful question. Obviously, the answer is yes. Otherwise these companies won't survive. And we see lots of companies fail to do that, and that's why they disappear. And I would say the simple answer to this question is, my view is, these companies continuously manage their business from portfolio perspective. I have to kind of point out, some time ago, McKinsey consultant, they kind of developed this kind of a concept called the Horizon 1 business, Horizon 2 business, and Horizon 3 business. It basically just an interesting analogy is to have a sustainable, healthy family. You got to have people with the different generations. The core generation, of course, these are the pillar. These kind of earn income for the household. They keep the lights on, they keep the door open. Then it's also equally important, sometimes more challenging, to have a next generation, which is kind of a faster growing, they call it H2 business. These kind of maybe in the teenage or pre-teenage business, they already survived the vulnerable, very young child stage. So they have something, but they are promising, and you hope some of these kind of emerging business will become your next generation pillar business. So you really try to develop, help, incubate those kind of business. Then the other thing is you need constantly kind of searching, exploring the future seed business. Kind of different projects, different directions, different trends, you try different things. So for any kind of a companies, in order to really have long-term viable survivability, you need to continuously manage these three. You cannot just kind of ignore any one of them. So if you look at the history, I think the history is a very good lesson. For example, IBM is very interesting. Obviously IBM started as, if you talk about the computer business, their most famous computer business was the mainframe business, right? Of course, before mainframe, they have other kind of electronic products then replaced by the mainframe business. Then the mainframe business kind of as their core gradually declined or declined. Then you see kind of IBM successfully developed the PC business, right? PC business. Then they developed the software product business, basically selling software. Then they developed kind of the IT consulting, because the major IT consulting business was developed out of IBM. And today IBM was gradually entering this kind of a smart cloud business phase. So of course, at any moment, some of they tried many kind of things, but as one business eventually emerge as a core, then they can replace the declining core. Microsoft, that's another interesting story. Microsoft, we all know their core business used to be the Window business, right? Window business was kind of a PC, but that business is kind of declining. But after a few years ago, Microsoft successfully developed another kind of a pillar business, which is their game business, computer game business. Now Microsoft successfully kind of developed another business called the cloud business. But if you look at today, the Windows business is declining. So think about this scenario. If Microsoft failed to develop these kind of a future pillar business, Microsoft probably won't exist, right? So Nokia, that's another interesting example. Nokia, obviously they failed in their phone business, which used to be their pillar business, but they kind of failed to adapt to the smartphone business. But fortunately, Nokia developed another business called the telecom equipment. Now the company has transformed itself to become a major telecom equipment player. So, at any moment, these kind of new business, at any moment, some of these kind of a new pillar business are young stage seed business, but you need to continuously manage those kind of portfolio. Otherwise, the company won't survive. So I would say for a company that have exist for a long time, that is the key lesson.
Sure. And Roger, do you think is it any easier? I mean, those obviously you've drawn there, largely tech companies. But what if you're not a tech company? I mean, is it a prerequisite that you're a tech company? I mean, we might look at that if we're in, I don't know, property, manufacturing.
No, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
We might think it's more difficult, or it doesn't come as naturally to do this. I mean, is that the case?
No, actually, I think this is not a technology issue. The technology industry is probably more brutal because technology product life cycle changes much faster. That's what we see. A lot of examples we are familiar with. But this kind of happens to any company. I can tell you, for example, in the soft drink company, Coca-Cola is facing that kind of challenge. Pepsi is facing that kind of challenge because their core product. For example, a lot of people these days, at least in the United States, they tend to kind of drink low sweet, kind of a drink beverage because they felt it's not healthy. So that really kind of hurts Coca-Cola's core product. So if you look at Coca-Cola, for example, they developed many categories like water business, low beverage business, and the fruit business. And now Coca-Cola is trying coffee business. Whether it's going to become their core, we don't know. So I think this is not just technology companies' challenge. Everybody's challenge. As long as the market changes, you got to change your business.
Sure.
Right.
And so we talk about how this can be a difficult thing to do. And I know you sort of mentioned in the past in some of your work about how part of the reason why core business is sort of, as it were, so influential inside organizations is because those are the ones that generate the revenue, right? And so they have, in some sense, they have the power. Whereas innovation teams, they just come to the table, but they just don't have the same influence because they always, trying to prove themselves that the idea could, at some stage in the future, be a big one. And I wonder, we have this, it's very sort of fashionable in some sense to talk about culture within an organization. I just wonder what your thoughts are on culture and this idea of establishing an innovation culture inside an organization. I mean, is that one way, in some sense, to sort of level the playing field? If core business can get on board with this idea of innovation as well by means of a culture throughout the organization, is that going to help?
Yeah, I would say the answer definitely is yes. A lot of people talking about the importance of culture. I kind of agree and disagree. On the agree part, culture is just like oxygen. Culture is just like water. It kind of permeates inside company. It influences everybody's behavior. So if a company has a very healthy, innovative culture, they typically kind of tolerate a lot of new ideas, a lot of kind of different unique thinkings, experiments, things like that. So these things are very, very important, very, very healthy. But what I want to say, earlier I said I do not necessarily agree with this kind of statement because to make a company truly innovative company, you need something far beyond culture. You need disciplined, holistic management system. Maybe that's the way I describe it. It's a holistic management system. Of course, culture is one piece of that system, is one component. And I'll give you an example about why culture won't solve the problem. Sometimes if you don't have other pieces in place, it's going to hurt your company. If you look at Lego, it's kind of interesting case. From 1999 to 2003, of course, 1999, this company was not doing well, so they kind of got a new CEO. This guy was kind of famous for turning around the company, also kind of encouraging new idea, cultures, innovations. So he hired a lot of kind of designers, people, outsiders, different talent, different perspective, different mindsets, bring to the company, really encourage people to think all sorts of kind of innovative ideas. So, if you look at that period of time, Lego kind of explored many, many new areas. They added computer games, they added clothing, movies, theme parks, and customized themes. We all know Lego's kind of a traditional business was those kind of interlocking interchangeable type of games, right? So
Cool.
in those period of time, the company was very, very kind of aggressive in exploring these different fields. As I mentioned, these different areas. And also some people even, some designers, innovators in the companies even start to challenge. Maybe Lego does not need to stick to its kind of a core, its tradition, because time has changed. But the performance actually was kind of a swing, very kind of a high. Some years very good revenue, some years kind of bad revenue, and the cost is out of control. Because one interesting part for Lego's business is how many those basic components you, because all the games based upon those kind of components. So managing those components is extremely important because you have to manage it, warehouse it, deliver it, and if you got so many different pieces of those basic components, the cost, it's a chaos, and also the quality is issue and logistics issue because the stores, they need certain piece of components, but they don't get it. So they kind of clearly failed. They clearly failed, even though the company was, from 1999 to 2003, was very positive, really encouraging people to innovate, culture-wise, mindset-wise, but clearly. So they kind of changed the CEO. Then they kind of install this kind of very disciplined, what they call the discipline and a management system. And for me, to create this kind of a sustainable innovation engine or innovation system, you really need a multi-dimensional solutions. Okay, you need proper organizational or different organizational setups to host types of innovation activities. You need a funding system because the innovation funding process, the funding system is very different from the regular business budgeting system. You need a talent development programs because people who develop incubated new projects, they are very different from people who execute business, big scale business, right? And many times you need to create innovation programs. And also these days, technology, the digitization is a big driving force for company to innovate, right? So technology is, developing smart business. That's another very important piece. But after all these kind of things, you need another very, very crucial component called the strategy. Strategy is very, very important driving companies' innovation activities because it's part of the company's growth. It's part of a company's future development. So all these kind of different pieces need to be in place to build a holistic innovation engine. And it's a very disciplined innovation engine, right? I say cultural, agree and disagree. Culture is just one piece of it.
Just one piece of it, sure.
Incentive systems, things like that.
Right. And so given that it is a multifaceted process and it does require quite a far-reaching, skill set, I would say, to make this happen. Yeah. But can we talk about best practices when it comes to innovation, or is it something that's really done, differently, in different places, different companies, different philosophies about how this works?
Yeah, of course. Different companies have a slightly different approach for sure, because every company's culture, every company's business, every company's the product life cycle is very different because product life cycle also determines how you engage with the innovation, right? And so the answer is definitely yes. But I think overall, I still believe companies need to think from this kind of holistic approach to embrace and manage innovation. You cannot just do one piece because after all, this is a very complicated kind of a system issues, right?
Sure.
I remember actually you also kind of mentioned maybe in the past a different question. How do you manage innovation? How do you manage the natural conflict between innovation activities and the core business kind of issue? Because there's a natural conflict. Then how do you manage those innovation activities? I would probably add one kind of a thought to this. I think although many established companies have challenges in managing innovation because their core business, does not kind of actually support innovation activities, but that's not always the case. That's not always the case. In other words, we shouldn't just always view innovation is in conflict with a company's existing business. Kind of to answer this question, to address this question, how to make existing business fully embrace and support and help innovation activities, I would like to ask your audience to think two very fundamental issues in innovation, or to make innovation happen in existing companies. One issue is the motivation issue. The second issue is the capability or ability issue. So every time you think about innovation in existing company, probably just beyond existing company, you have to address these two problems: the motivation issue and the ability issue. The reason we see in many companies, the existing business unit, existing business department, they reject or they push back innovation activities, it is either the motivation problem or the capability problem, meaning they either don't want to support that innovation activity because that innovation activity may hurt their interests, may cannibalize their business. So naturally, kind of business divisions do not want to help your enemies. Nobody wants to help your enemies, right? So that's kind of motivation issue. Sometimes existing business unit, they really don't know how to kind of develop the system to incubate a new business, as we mentioned in your first question, because developing, incubating uncertain new business requires very different system. But for established company, they don't know how to do this. So that's kind of a ability issue. So, from top corporate perspective, when you design this innovation engine or innovation system, you got to address these two issues simultaneously, right? So I would say naturally, for some innovation activity, if it's like incremental, naturally, business unit will like to help these innovations because it's going to immediately help your core business. Of course, you still need to help the business unit to enable them to do that. But I think motivation-wise, not always in conflict. Sometimes you have like incentive systems, kind of force them to develop. For example, I know some companies, their KPI is business unit need to have certain percentage of the revenue coming from the new product area. So then it forces many business unit to kind of modify their products, to do the incremental changes so they can constantly search for kind of a new frontier, but not drastically different. Not, sometimes kind of a completely kind of white space business, right? So I think in that sense, you can place those innovation activities within the existing business unit kind of a home. And so to leverage the resource, the talent, the capabilities of the existing business unit. And they naturally would like to help and support that if there's incentive system there. But on the other hand, if an innovation business or projects is kind of is going to cannibalize the core business or existing business unit, or, it's a completely new, different business, then I would say in that kind of situation, the company need to put them in a very different, or separate them, in a different situation, completely different team, different KPIs, different power structures. So, the great example if you look at IBM, their PC business, of course, at one time was an innovative business, but that business was developed in a completely separate location. I believe it was in Florida, probably. But IBM's home base is in New York. And another, their recent example, Walmart, is now kind of try to transform itself, developing its e-commerce business. So then they develop the e-commerce business in a completely different location. I believe their e-commerce headquarters in Silicon Valley. So you cannot just put those innovation activities back in their Arkansas headquarters, asking the established business people to do it. I think for that, either those offline Walmart store business, they don't want to support that because this hurt their, kind of a store sales, or they don't know how to do it. So that's why, that makes a lot of sense to separate them. But there are many innovation activities you can put them together.
So it's very interesting, Rod. Thank you. That's a really, it's a nuanced picture, I think. We start out with this sort of claim that it's, conflict, core business innovation. But in fact, the picture is much more nuanced than that, as you've said.
Yeah.
But Professor Chen, we're almost out of time, unfortunately. So, but I want to ask you maybe one final question, because you talk about, having these, innovation activities and core business, literally in separate, physical locations. And I just want to, so, given all the complexities of doing innovation that we've talked about and difficulties, what is the role then of external partners? What is the role of, the Silicon Valley ecosystem, compared to a big corporation, based somewhere else in the world or somewhere else in another physical, location? Because does it not then make sense on some level simply to concentrate on your core business, not try to innovate too much, but instead just, I don't know, buy a startup, become a customer of an innovative startup, partner with a VC firm, maybe let the innovation, as it were, take care of itself, and then just try to, buy it or partner with it, at some stage. And perhaps we can, end on this thought. What's your view there?
Yeah, actually, that's also a very, very good question. My answer is kind of a twofold, yes or no. On the yes part, we see companies do that all the time. Every day, you see companies buying work with the startup companies. So that's kind of the yes part. But the no part is, I can honestly tell you, no company can really depend on external companies to buy their growth, to buy their future. No company can do that. I can give you tons of examples. Maybe people were talking about a successful story where Facebook bought Instagram. And Instagram becomes a very successful growth story for Facebook. But after Facebook acquired kind of Instagram, they put lots of help, support to Instagram to help it grow. Without Instagram, probably would be a very different story. I can tell you many failed stories. Lenovo at one time bought Motorola, tried to grow its cell phone business. And other interesting story, if you look at China, because I'm kind of come from China, I know some interesting story there. eBay many years ago went to China, tried to grow their China business. What they did was they buy the top auction business company. Okay, but they failed. Okay, it's a great company. Okay, it's a top player. Amazon, when they went to China, they did the same thing. They bought the top best company in the e-commerce space in China, hoping to grow their China business. It failed. Okay, so think about this: acquiring a child already reached a teenage stage. That's kind of a pretty good candidate, right? But is it easy for you to adopt those kind of child into your family? There are several reasons. It's not that easy because that business already kind of developed its personality, right? And so integrate with the existing business is hard. And then you don't integrate, that's not really the skill. I will give you another example, how to integrate them or not integrate them. eBay and PayPal used to be one company. eBay acquired PayPal. Okay, I'm not sure if you can look at the history. eBay acquired PayPal, but somehow eBay was not able to successfully grow PayPal, so the investors forced eBay to spin out PayPal. But look, today, PayPal was a very successful growth story, innovative story. So in other words, eBay did not have this kind of capability to manage this very different business they acquired, right? under the same roof. But the opposite story is interesting. Alibaba, also in the e-commerce business, but if at Alibaba, they have a very, very successful payment business and a microloan business called Ant Microloan Company. So Alibaba developed that kind of capability, right? So the simple point is, other thing I want to say is, the reason you cannot kind of fully depend on going externals to buy your growth, to buy your innovation, is because if you're not in that market space to do something by yourself, you either do not understand the market dynamics, you do not understand the nuance of the business, you do not understand which company is a very good target candidates, you do not know when to buy a certain company, you do not know the product life cycles development stage. Because if you do not understand the timing, then either you buy too late, too early, and you may not even know which direction the market is going to evolve. So you have to do something by yourself. And also maybe the last piece I want to talk about is, you may say, actually you do find a great candidate company, high growth potential, okay? They already show some evidence, and that's a great target you want to buy. But many times, this company, because this company has a great growth potential, they know it as workforce. So either those companies are very, very expensive, too expensive to purchase, or they don't sell. They don't want to sell to other company because they already see they have great future. So that is why I said for any established company, it's almost impossible to kind of depend on external acquisition or partnership to buy your innovation, to buy your future. It's impossible.
Thank you, Roger. Well, Roger, it's you've given us so much to think on, to chew on. I mean, it's such a nuanced picture. So much more we could talk about, but I'm afraid that's where we'll have to draw things to a close today. But Professor Roger Chen, just a really big thanks to you for joining us today on the program.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
And to our audience out there, we hope you have enjoyed it as well, listening to my conversation today with Professor Roger Chen. I would like to say, if you are interested in finding out a bit more about the sorts of ideas that we've talked about today with Professor Chen, I would encourage you to have a look at our website, siliconvalley.center. We run various immersion programs, so designed for executives who'd like to get up to speed on what's happening today in the innovation space, in the digital transformation space, in the startup space, and about how you can connect your company to all of those wonderful ideas and entrepreneurs and people and technologies that are out there today. So do check our website, siliconvalley.center, for details. But on that note, that is where we'll wrap things up. So from my guest today, Professor Roger Chen of the University of San Francisco, we'd like to wish you all the best, and join us again very soon for the next one. Bye-bye.